How's it going, everyone? My name is JC Wylde. Welcome to your complete latex mask making monster tutorial. This is going to be a lot of fun. We are going to have such a good time over the next 2 weeks. It's going to be about 3 hours on camera, but it'll be about 2 weeks altogether. I've been doing this professionally for about 13 years now. I have 3 art businesses where I sell my artwork online all over the world. And I have been a part of many film productions here in Regina. But I want to first off thank CDP, Saskatchewan Media Production Industry Association, for putting this together and for funding this so you guys could have this. This is unprecedented. For CDP to bring this to you guys is awesome. So it'll be available and on demand. Thank you to everyone who's going to take part in this and to watch what's going to happen. This is going to be, like I said, a lot of fun. You guys are going to learn tons and tons. We're going to go through everything from the initial choosing of the design, to the sculpting, to the mold making, to the mask pouring, to the painting of the latex. And if you're interested in masks or in special effects at all, this is how to begin. This is the foundation of it all. You need to learn how to sculpt and you need to learn how to paint. We'll be making just the face, just the front mask for people to wear. But in my deluxe classes that I teach one-to-one, this is where I can show you how to make 1:1 scale huge head busts. But we are going to have an amazing time. So let's get into the shop right now and start sculpting. The character I've chosen for this, there's not a lot of pictures available of him, which is a challenge for me. But as long as I have a couple pictures of the actual front face, that should be sufficient just because I've been doing this so long. You want to have tons of reference. You can't just have one picture in front of you. That doesn't work. Some advice I have, and which is why I'm taking a character that is from a movie already, is because when you're a new sculptor, you've never touched clay before, you've never sculpted a face, to learn how to sculpt and to get good at sculpting, you need to copy forms. So you need to sculpt already existing characters that you can find ready, available, high definition pictures of at every angle possible. Side angles, front angles, back angles. You need all the angles. I've been doing this 13 years and it is very difficult for me to just sculpt something original out of my head. I like to recreate beloved characters. So that's a huge piece of advice, is don't just sculpt something random that is something in your brain, unless you have 1,000 sketches of it that you've already done. Find something that's an already existing character. It doesn't have to be a specific one, like a mummy. Find 30 pictures of a mummy. Frankenstein, find a bunch of pictures of Frankenstein and make your own. But it's very important to have reference pictures. This right here is oil-based clay. I do not recommend using water-based clay, and water-based clay is the gray stuff you see all the time that's soft to the touch, that's really messy. This is 10 years old already. This clay is reusable. As long as you can scrape the dirt off of it after you're done using it, it is 100% reusable, will never dry, no matter what conditions, it will not dry. So this is from the dollar store. I'm going to say there's probably about $15, 15 bricks worth on this face. You can see how deep it is too here. Very, very deep, very thick. We're going to need that much depth for this sculpture itself, because he's got a wide face and all the details I'm going to have to build out. People ask, why do you use red clay? Red is easier to see your mistakes, to see where your lines don't add up, to see where your structural integrity is off. It's harder to see that in a darker clay because the lighting and the angles kind of blinds you in some ways. So when you're using this red, it kind of messes with your eyes, so it's not with everyone. It's not for everyone. A lot of people won't like to use red, and you don't have to. But my very, very important advice is do not use yellow or colorful clay at all. Use either a dark or red. Use either really dark blue, really dark gray, or a red. Any other color is not recommended. It will mess with your eyes and it'll be harder to sculpt things. You'll see as we go along why I use red. You can use gray. Not everybody likes the red. I love the red. These are the tools we're going to be using. you don't need a lot of tools, but you need specific tools, and I'll show you the reasons for each one. So this is called a rake tool. So it's got a bunch of teeth here and a bunch of teeth here, bigger teeth, smaller teeth. A rake tool is just to rough out your surface and to rake little eye sockets and stuff like that, so you don't have to use your fingers very much. This is another, a loop tool, which is a scraper on both sides. I don't use this square scraper a lot, but I use this a ton. Again, scraping out the holes of the eyes. This, I believe, is for dentists. I'm not 100% sure, but a little tiny ball on the top. Ooh, that's hard for you guys to see. And then a bigger ball on the other end. Round surfaces for sculpting is integral. You need a rounded edge, so you need to buy a couple of these. This one right here, as you can see, has a soft, curved edge to this and then a flat indent. This is for making wrinkles. This one is very, very important for making wrinkles. It's nearly impossible if you don't have that. So that's a very important tool. Other side is a flat kind of spatula. That's very useful as well. Here's a smaller scraping tool that's almost identical to this one. It's got a square on one end and a circle on the other. These are both very important. I use these a lot. Here is a kind of like a little spoon on one side and then a flat edge on the other. This is similar to the ball surface, but there's some places you can't get with this and there's some places you can't get with this, so it's good to have both. This is a beauty supply. It's actually a pimple popper, a blackhead popper. This is one of my most important tools. It's a very tiny loop tool. Again, very similar to both of these. Very, very similar to both of these, a loop tool, but the tiniest loop. And you're going to be using this tiny one more than anything else for the loops, because this has very important ends on it. And last but not least, this is what I make other wrinkles from. It's almost like a guitar string that's been bent right here. It's more loop tools. Loop tools are so important. So I'm going to show you how to use all these very, very, very detailed once we get into this. So this is everything we're going to need. I always have a wet cloth because it's oil-based clay, so after each time, if you get this red on your clothes, it will not come off. This is dyed. So alright, so the next video that we start, we're going to jump right into the sculpting of the character. So thanks for watching so far. See you soon. Good morning, everyone. We are going to start sculpting. I just wanted to give a few more little details about what we're doing here. So I chose this character based on the fact that I only need his face, because I have a couple of these wigs kind of things that he's wearing in the movie. So that is going to be easier to be able to make it look like it's a full piece. So another thing I forgot to show you guys about this. So under this clay here, there's a block of wood that's about, I'd say 2.5, 3 inches by 3 inches, and then the clay is stuck to that. So the clay's not just going to stick to a board, you need to put a piece of wood in there. So that's about it. We're going to get started here. So always the first thing I do, I don't sculpt too many faces like this. It's usually full heads, necks, everything. So this is a lot easier in certain ways, but more challenging in other ways. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a basic line down the middle to see where I know the middle of his face is. And you just do that by eye. You don't need to have any sort of measurements or anything for that. You can use tools to perfectly do it, but I'm pretty good at eyeing things out, so I'm just gonna... There we go. So that's slightly off, I can see, so I'm gonna do that again. Nope. Okay, there we go. So now we have a basic line of where we can start. So sculpting is adding clay and taking clay away. There's not just one way to do anything perfectly, and there's not the right way. There's a million ways to sculpt. You will learn over this that I'll be doing things that other people don't do, and I'm sure if you go on YouTube and watch other tutorials, people do a million other things that I wouldn't do. So it's just what is most comfortable to you. So the first thing I'm going to do is rough out where the details of the face will be. So I'm just going to mark where I believe they will be by looking. See, I got all these pictures right in front of me here, so you're not going to see all these. I've already shown you guys that I have all the pictures in front of me, so I'll be using those to reference throughout this entire thing. You don't need to see that. You don't need to see me referencing them. Just know that they're in front of me always and that I'm looking up a million times. So I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to rough out to where I have a rough idea of how this face is going to be shaped, and I already have a kind of little hook under the chin, which is exactly what he has. So yeah, he's got a little bit of a hook chin here, and I already have that. And this is just the clay I put on months ago, so that's a good start. We have something. So I take basic measurements. So when I'm seeing how much high the mouth is, to have a rough estimate of where to start, I'm just doing everything in my brain. I'm not measuring anything. If you need to measure things, and I've never measured anything. I've just done it out of just seeing, okay, it's about this much, it's about this much. This face is pretty exact to the size that we're actually sculpting right now. So I can actually use measurements if I want. It wouldn't be 100%, but it would be very accurate. So first off is the nose, because it's almost dead in the middle of the face, pretty near. But this isn't going to be his whole entire head, so we have to take considerations for where his hairline up here or the wig line would be. So again, just roughing that out, just going to make a line. It doesn't even need to be accurate. It's just a base for me, just to know how much I don't need to worry about. Because if I'm thinking his hairline's going to be way up here, that's going to be inaccurate. It's going to be probably about 3 inches forward. There are thousands of tutorials on how to sculpt on YouTube. YouTube's a great place to find stuff like that. There is no one right way to sculpt. There's millions of ways to sculpt. This is one way to do it. And it's been successful to me for 13 years, so that's why I'm sharing it to the rest of you. So sculpting is such a slow process. It's not for everybody. People will get extremely bored. If you get bored easy, you probably are not going to enjoy sculpting very much. But if you enjoy reading a book and being at peace with your mind and relaxing, sculpting is an incredible form of therapy. It's so relaxing, it's so de-stressing. I could sit here for 5-6 hours and it seems like an hour or two. So I've roughed out where exactly, approximately the top of his hairline is. So, and I could sculpt all of these, the mouth, the eyes, and the nose, and I could look at it and say that's off. So I'm going to smush it all again, and I'm going to try again. So what I've done here, if you can see on the camera, is I have scratched in eyes, nose, and a mouth. And what I've done is just put it where I think it's basically going to be. We'll never know for sure, but I've just scratched it out so I know where I'm going to be going. That's the first thing we do when we start a sculpt, is we make little marks, little scratches of where we think the eyes are going to be, where we think the nose is going to be, just so we have a reference of where to attack it. Because if you start down here with a nose, then you're going to have to start all over again and put it in 1,000 places. So make a line on your sculpture with a tool right down the center, and then start scratching out the nose, mouth, and eyes. So as you see, this face is completely flat. Now we know human faces are not flat. We know monsters' faces are not flat. We know vampires' faces are not flat. So first of all, I had to put all of the scratches on here and the basic outline of where everything's going to be. And now I'm going to use tools like this to start digging out all of the textures of the cheeks, textures of the mouth, all the nose. I'm going to be sculpting all of that out now and trying to... So with clay and with sculpting, you're not only taking away, but you're also adding. We're doing both. There's no right or wrong way to sculpt. But this is how I do it, and this is the way it's been effective for me. So we're going to start with the eye holes and just kind of dig in to the depth. And you just got to use judgment. There's no right or wrong way to do this. Unless you're a super talented prodigy, you're probably not going to be good at sculpting immediately. That's not expected. That's like picking up a guitar and being able to play. It's just not realistic. But practice makes perfect. So I'm basically just kind of guessing how much needs to be dug out. And there's no too much or not enough. You just got to go piece by piece, and it'll come together eventually, and you'll start to see where you're right and where you're wrong. And that's the benefit of red clay for me. I know red clay is harder to see on camera, as I'm noticing right now, but it's the only option I have, and it's the only way to do it, to be able to, like I said earlier, to see all your mistakes properly. So I mostly use my hands when I'm doing all of this until I get into the fine details. But I'm just showing you a way that you can use these tools. Like I said, no right way and wrong way to do it. So I'm probably just gonna go like this to get the right depth I want. Use my fingers to sculpt. The sculpture I've chosen is an incredibly difficult sculpture. It's simplistic in the way that the facial features are very simple, but it's difficult in, if I don't get it right, it's going to look nothing like it's supposed to. So there's a certain place we need to get to before we can call it a success, and we'll see that as we go. And to be honest, even once the finished sculpture is finished, there's no guarantee that you're going to think it looks like it until we make the mold and start painting the actual mask itself. That's when you're going to know, holy crap, this looks amazing. The sculpture does not always reflect that. And some people get disheartened because they're like, well, that doesn't look very good. But it's hard for some people to picture an actual character when it's red clay or gray clay or blue clay. It's just hard for people to put that together in their brains. So don't get flustered if you're working on something and you think it looks like crap, because paint is the ultimate tell. Once you start painting something, then you'll know if you're on the right track. So I'm trying to get a good depth because the eyeballs will be placed here. They're not going to be sculpted in. The eyeballs will be sculpted and then placed in. So I'm going to get a good depth. A lot of learning how to sculpt just takes time and pushing clay around. That's all you're doing, is pushing clay around to get a feel of what you're doing and to get comfort with what you're doing. Sometimes I'll sit there pushing clay around and I'll get nothing from it. I'll be sitting there sculpting different angles for hours and then be completely unhappy with it, smush it and start over again. That's the beauty of clay. When you're sculpting an actual face, there's kind of a hollowness right here. So we got to make sure it's not just flat. We got to build that hollowness out. So the next thing I want to do is put some heaviness over the brow. Because we know no matter male or female, child or adult, we all have a slight brow. So we'll have to build up some depth, some thickness right over here. Not too much. And then his nose, obviously we have a divot in the middle of our nose. It doesn't go straight down from our eyes, right? So let's push in that depth right there. So I don't want to put too much brow on, but again, I can wipe a lot of it away that I feel is unnecessary. So we're not just going to put it down straight, we're going to kind of bend it a bit over the eyes. Okay, so you see how I put that on there? So now I'm going to smooth that out so it's in line with the rest of the sculpture. So now we actually smooth it into the sculpture. We don't just let it sit there. We let it be part of the sculpture. We fuse it. So we just use your fingers for this. You don't need tools. You don't need tools, to be honest, until you're at the detail stage. A lot of people use tools from Go. I do not like to use tools from Go. They're very unnecessary in a lot of places, and it's a lot better for you to learn how to sculpt with your fingers. Tools are for fine details. Sculpting should be with your hands and your fingers. So as you know, there's pictures above me here that I'm referencing. I'm always referencing these pictures. I'm looking at them probably every 10-20 seconds just to see if I'm on the right track and to fix things as I'm fixing them, as I'm actually creating them. If I keep referencing the pictures constantly, then I know what I'm doing right and I know what I'm doing wrong. Add a little bit to the nose, just to get a little bit of bulk and to know what other hills and valleys I need to create. Noses and ears are very, very difficult to sculpt. Those are the two body parts that, for most sculptors, are going to be a challenge. Noses obviously are slightly easier, but ears are just awful. I hate sculpting ears. Thankfully, this guy does not need ears. Okay, now I'm trying to figure out if the nose is low enough. Let's do that? There we go. Trying to figure out if this is low enough or if it needs to be lower in reference to the mouth. And yes, it does look like it needs to be lower, so I'm just going to slowly, slightly push it down a bit. You can either add more clay to the bottom or you can just push it. Clay is malleable. Clay is pliable. You do whatever you want to it. Beautiful, beautiful thing. I don't have side views of this character, unfortunately, and that's a real deal breaker when you guys are sculpting at home. Do not pick characters that you cannot have side references from. You need to have exact references of every shape of his head. He's got to be turned in several different ways for you to have proper sculpting references. Sure, you can just do it out of like your mind, but it's never going to be as accurate as it would be if you had the perfect reference points. This was all to get the right depth and to see if they're on the right place on the face. They could have been too high, they could have been too low, but this is all to just start placing things to see if they're in the right place. So I feel that the nose looks like it's in the right place. I feel like the eyes look like they're in the right place for now, just for now. But now I'm going to go on to the mouth, which is not in the right place. Now that I've put the eyes and nose there, I know the mouth is too high. That's how we can tell these things. So now the drawing I did of the mouth, the little scrapes, I'm going to blend that back in, and I'm going to redraw it in the right way. So I'm just going to cut in the outline of his mouth pretty much right there. So we're going to leave it a little room. We don't want it to be too close under the nose, obviously. So we'll use our best judgment, which is half of the game in sculpting. So his mouth has a very specific flow to it. So I'm going to try to get that as close as I can before I start sculpting things. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is, I have the basic shape of the mouth, so now, so you see the pictures, right? You see that the teeth are coming out of the mouth. They're not just the little vampire teeth in the mouth, they're actually protruding from the mouth. So what we have to do now is dig out the mouth and then add the sculpted kind of dentures inside of it. What we're doing now is called blocking out the sculpture. Before we do any small detail like wrinkles and the burn in his head or the teeth or the lips, this is called blocking out, which means we're just making the basic blocks pieces of the actual texture of the face. So we're just trying to get the cheeks, the head, the nose, and the mouth, everything in the right place before we start the actual work. So that's called blocking a sculpt. After this is over and you've watched it and you want to get involved and to do these things yourself, I am available for questions and concerns. You can get a hold of me email me at creepingdeathproductions@hotmail.com, or you can find my Regina Sculpt Night Facebook page and message me there. So all of those sculpting supplies that I showed you guys yesterday in the video, close-ups of, unfortunately there's hardly any places to buy those locally. There is one place to buy a few, but I had to buy all of those sculpting supplies online. And I honestly can't even give you a specific place because I ordered them individually, each one on eBay. However, I have sets of sculpting tools for sale, so if you ever need any, please get a hold of me. is kind of fat in a few places, so I need to kind of... So another thing about latex that is very, very important is when you are sculpting and you make a mold and you pour latex to make the actual product, dried latex shrinks. So whatever sculpt that you're sculpting needs to be slightly oversized to be measured properly. So this has to be slightly bigger than the actual face that we are sculpting for it to turn out the exact way we want. So in general, latex shrinks 7 to 15%. That is not taking into account like 40 below or 40 above weather. That's just regular temperature, regular run-of-the-mill kind of day. Latex does and will shrink 7 to 15%. So that is a drastic difference if you're sculpting things for people to wear over their whole head, but when you're making a front face mask, it's not really going to be a big difference because these will fit most everybody. But when you're making a full-size head mask, your measurements have to be 100% perfect, or it will be too small for someone to wear or too big for someone to wear. So always take into account the maximum. Take into account the 15%. Never take 7. I always take. I have had things shrink more than I expected, and I've had things shrink less than I expected. So always make bigger on the side of caution because you can always shrink. But if you sculpt it too small, you cannot enlarge it. So that's some good advice. So what I'm going to do next is these details right here. So the cheeks and the indents in the sides of the cheeks. So we're going to give it a little bit of detail here. Not a lot. So again, I'm adding clay. So what I'm going to do next is, in his picture here, which I'm always going to have available for you guys. So in this picture here, what I'm going to do next is there's a little bit of puffiness under the eyes. It's too slim on mine. So I'm going to add a little bit of puffiness under here so that the eyes are deeper, the sockets are deeper. And then we're going to place some eyes in that socket. So let's try to do that here. Alright, let's get to some fun stuff. Now we're gonna put teeth in. This is gonna be fun. It's gonna be very interesting, very difficult in many ways. So what I'm gonna have to do is sculpt the teeth these teeth like a plate that'll stick in the mouth. Again, you don't have to do it that way. That is one way to skin a cat. The way these teeth come out of the mouth though, I can't see another way to do it. I can't picture another legit, effective way to do it. So that's just sitting in the mouth. It is how I want it, so I'm going to kind of blend the little pieces in at the top here. I'm not going to blend the bottom in because we need that line, that hard line. So I just blended the top of that in there. So that bottom kind of jaw there is set properly. So I'm going to find two teeth here that will work, and we're going to stick them in. So I'm going to stick these teeth right into the clay. That's what it looks like in the picture. And now I'm going to have to sculpt two fangs beside it. So we're just trying to get some teeth that kind of look good for now. They're just going to be placeholders to let us know we're on the right track. Bottom row is just set in place. Not perfect, they're just set there. So I find it easier to cut out the mouth when I'm starting to sculpt and then to sculpt within it instead of just carving everything we need out of the existing clay already. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I just find it a lot easier and accurate this way. Getting somewhere, getting somewhere. Okay, so now I want to kind of fix the insides of the cheek lines here. So I'm just going to use my tool with the two ball ends. There we go. So now with the smaller ball, I'm going to go and sculpt right in that middle line. See, now that I'm seeing things come together, smaller blocking parts like the teeth, now it makes it easier for me to picture where everything else is going to be. What I'm doing here is trying to get the right depth on the lips and around the mouth, because the mouth is not supposed to be flat either. It's supposed to be turned and have a little bit of depth to it. So we're getting some shape to the face. We're getting a lot of, you can see the cheeks are getting a little more accurate. Alright, I'm going to sculpt the eyeballs right now and see if they'll fit, which means I'll have the right angles if it fits right. So what I'm doing is making a ball of clay, and what I will be doing is cutting that exactly in half and placing one in each socket. So it's not like placing one of these in a socket, half of that will be going in a socket. So that's why you got to get it as round as you need to. It doesn't have to be perfect because we'll sculpt it. So I'd say that's roundish. So now I'm going to get my sharpest one here and cut that in half. So this is what we got. We have two pieces right there, each approximately the same size. We'll kind of flatten them out a bit so they're more of an oval shape. Not flatten the dome out, but kind of flatten it this way. So you don't want to flatten the dome piece, you just want to flatten this to make it more oval looking down. So we want to do that on both pieces. And then we place those in the sockets, like such. So this is how we start sculpting the eyes. Now I can tell right now that I put just enough clay in there. So that's going to be pretty awesome. So now we're going to kind of blend these in. We're just going to squish them down without screwing up the integrity of the dome. Like, sure, we can push on it, but we want the eye to be a dome, slightly. We'll fix it all perfectly later, but we want to squish them all down in the corners to make sure they stick. So there we go. We have the general shape of the eye in there. That's exactly what we want. So what we're going to do now is use our little it's like a spoon with no, it's like a half spoon, or a spoon. This one we're going to use to blend. So we're going to actually blend the eyes into the sculpture. So I'm just blending it in, pretty much just blending it in. And then even when I'm done those parts, I'm wiping it so I can blend it properly. I'm taking a look at all of my angles so far. Eyebrows, eyes, nose, mouth, wrinkles, mouth wrinkles, chin, cheek. I'm liking everything I see. That doesn't mean everything is the right way. It just means I'm on the right track. The blocking is pretty close to done, meaning the actual angles of all the facial features are almost all where I want them. Once that happens, the blocking is finished. What we're going to start touching on now is more details in the eye sockets and the eyeballs. So I got the mouth, the teeth are nowhere near perfect. They're just placed where they need to be. So the mouth is placed where I need it to be, but the details in it are obviously nowhere near. I haven't even begun to do the details. So we're still technically blocking out the sculpture in certain ways. So let's just give a close look for what we're starting with today. So the teeth are the shape that I want, but we have to detail them, we have to make the gum line around them, we have to do a whole lot more. Nothing's anywhere near where we need it. But we're going to work on the eyes right now. So now I'm gonna look very closely at this and to see if I have any more blocking that needs to be done. Just trying to see if I have the right angles of the face, if I have to add anything, if I have to take anything away before I start small detail. Because it's mostly the big blocking and getting the shapes where you want them before we start detail. I'm pretty sure we're almost done that. Pretty sure we're almost done, meaning that so far I believe that the eyes are in the perfect place, the nose, the mouth, just the placement is perfect. That's what blocking is all about. So in my opinion, the cheeks, the chin, the mouth, the nose, the eyes, the eyelids, the sockets, everything is in the correct place, and all of this work up until now was just to get that effect. So now I can start smoothing certain areas and getting certain areas ready for small detail, like wrinkles, fixing the mouth, the lips, getting down to the soft details that bring out the detail of a sculpture. So now I'm sculpting detail of the nose. Now I'm trying to get the nose perfect, the shape of the nose. Because now that I know it's in the right place, I need to get the detail in the right place. Now I'm picking up the sculpt to get different light angles. When the light's just overhead, it's really hard to see every single angle. And that's what's also really good about the red clay, is now that I've changed the angle just slightly, everything that I could not see is visible. All the mistakes and all the places where it's not full and symmetrical in perfect ways. That's what we need to do, and we need to turn this in every different angle to see all the places we're missing. fixing all of the gums around the teeth. I had just stuffed them in there. Now I'm gonna smooth them all out perfectly and shape the teeth the way they need to be shaped. Because they're where they should be, but the shapes are not accurate yet. We gotta make them perfect. I might cut the mouth out first to fix the inside, because all of this inside of the mouth, we can't really get in there with all these sculpting tools, so I'm gonna have to cut the mouth out, place it down, and then actually do the detail inside the mouth, which is not a lot of detail, but you can't just leave it. You have to, because when we make the mold, the plaster has to be able to get in there, so we have to make sure that it's ready and that it's not going to be a problem once we start molding. Because if we start to mold and we screw up the mold, that's it. Like we don't get another chance. I'm going to use one I didn't show you guys. So I'm going to cut the mouth out so we can fix the mouth and make it the way we want. So I'm going to follow the gum line. This is not going to be easy, it's going to screw things up, but this is what I anticipated having to do anyway because of the way the mouth is. Okay, so there's the bottom teeth. Now I'm going to fix all that, but most important, we got to get these top teeth out. So I can fix all that. So what we're going to do first is make the inside of this mouth the way we want. So all the backs of these teeth right here, so this is the front, but all the backs need to be smoothed in and blended so that they sit here properly and that they're not going to be a problem for us. So we can't have this mouth too deep. It's got to be slightly shallow because we just don't want a lot of undercuts in the mold. So what I'm doing is I'm just emptying out the mouth, and we're going to smooth some of the detail down and make it look like possibly that there's a tongue inside the mouth, just to take up some of the space. So I'm going to sculpt these while they're in my hand. It's a lot easier that way. So I need to get these teeth, these bottom teeth, I need to smooth them out. So we don't want the teeth to be too thin, because then they'll be hard to get out of the mold and they'll be hard to make out of latex. It needs to be a fatter piece like this with some mass behind it. But you don't want to see it in the sculpture. You don't want to know that there's something behind the teeth. So this is how it'll look in the bottom of the mouth, but behind it is actually some structure. So I'm not going to put these, I'm going to set these teeth in to see how they look, but to put these teeth in, as well as the top teeth, it's going to take, by the time I'm finished, at the very end. So I'm going to see how these look right now. So we're going to do what we can to blend these like we did the other one. So we need structure. So I need to, so I need to fill all of this, because we can't have these all loose when we're trying to mold. They have to be actually attached to the sculpture. These are just stuck on there. So we need to add little bits of clay. So all I'm doing is adding a bit of support behind these teeth so they don't bend or move so much. See that? And then I'm just going to blend it into the actual tooth itself. Okay, so it's all part of the, as you can see, it's all, now none of the teeth are loose. They're sculpted into the piece, which is what we need, and they're fat. So now I want to kind of straighten them out. We don't need to do any of the actual detail or gum lines until it's inside the sculpture again. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to scrape the top right here. I have to create a mechanical bond so the clay will stick inside the mouth. So I have to rake the top here. Rake it, rake it, rake it. Add a bunch of texture. And I got to do the same thing. Oop. Oop. To the inside top of this. So I'm just going to add a bunch of texture to the top here. Texture on the top of the mouth. We don't need nothing. We don't see anything there, so we can add that. Now this is not going to help 100%, but it's going to help a slight bit. So what I'm doing right now is I'm filling in the upper jaw, because this has to stay there. This has to be solid, and there's no other way to do that except to actually sculpt it into that. So what I'm doing now is I'm pushing and blending clay into the top jaw. So let's get onto some smaller detail. So I'm gonna say we're done blocking the sculpture. That means no more big details. So what I'm gonna work on now for today is we're gonna work on the little detail, like the brow. We're gonna fix the brow. We're gonna fix the eyes, the wrinkles by the eyes. We're gonna do a lot of the small details like that. And I hope you guys are trying to pay attention to the tools I'm using for specific details that I'm doing. As you can see, I changed tools about 100 times. And it's just there's always a tool better capable of a job than another tool. So you just got to get comfortable finding the different marks and the different uses each tool has. And none of them are specific for anything. You just have to figure out what they work best for you. rounding the eyes perfectly, the eyeballs, because there's obviously a lot of marks on them still, and we gotta smooth them out. So I'm using my little tiny pimple popper, the blackhead popper. This is definitely one of my favorite tools to use. Both ends are very, very good. I'm using the big one right now. So with curve down, I'll use that to sculpt and pull. Okay, so I'm happy with the eyes for now. They're not finished, but I'm happy with them for now. Since I'm going to start going on to major detail, I want to smooth out everything in the mouth so I don't have to revisit it again. So let's completely finish the mouth. Not the lips though, because the lips will be touched by our other detail. So we're going to focus right now on the teeth and the inside of the mouth, so we never have to visit those again on this sculpture. So in this picture you can see that because he's smiling, he'll have a bag under both eyes. So I'm going to work on putting extra bags under the eyes and sculpting in the brow. So I'm just going to choose this one. I'm going to use the big end. So you can see all I've done is put two little lines right there. So now I want to blend those lines. Need to go, for me these need to go a little deeper. I realize you guys are on the other side, so it's hard for you to see what I'm doing. Just trying to make this wound look natural without so many symmetrical details. Don't want it to be too symmetrical, meaning we want all this detail in the middle to be different in some way, shape, or form. Trying to make this wound look as natural as possible. So you don't want a bunch of symmetrical, exact duplicates of details. You want to make it look like there's tons of different textures in there, which so far it does. I see a few little dots that are looking a little similar that I just want to change a little bit. So I'm assuming it's going to be the same on both sides, so I'm going to just trying to make a little cheek wrinkle that's on most people's faces in different ways and in different locations. When looking at this picture of the actor in makeup, and the ones we're using for reference, the only actual makeup he has is the headpiece of the burn, his eyes obviously, contacts, and a mouth. Everything else is just actual like beauty makeup and effects makeup. There's no addition to details of his face. So everything like the chin, the nose, the cheeks, the eyelids, the wrinkles, those are all the actor's physical characteristics. So we have to get those as close as possible, because if it looks like the actor, then the makeup itself is going to look just as good. So this is just a big gouge, and now I hope you guys can see. With the tip of my thumb, I'm just going to blend it in so that there's not such sharp contrasting corners. So I'm just pushing very, very softly. I'm just flicking it almost. And then eventually the bottom will get softer and softer. So as you can see, it's turning more into a part of his cheek. You're not seeing the really hard edges, because all of it is smoothed down and blended in. So now it's just part of his cheek, which adds more character to the character. So this sculpture, let's go over it. Let's take a little bit of account of what we've done and what we're doing here. So the shape of the nose, I'm very happy with. That's exactly the shape of the actor's nose. Just a little bulbous tiny nose. Again, that's his real nose. It's not special effects makeup. So the nose is done, the mouth is done, the details around the mouth are finished, all of the actual jaw detail of this character is finished. The special effects makeup, the cross burn into his head, that's finished. The shape of his face is finished. What is not finished is the eyes. We are nowhere near done the eyes, and that is what we're going to go on to right now. The eyes is very, very important. This will make or break the sculpture in several ways. So you can see in his face, he doesn't have a lot of wrinkle detail, like especially under the eyes. Pretty fresh-faced kid. But then you can see when he's got all the makeup caked, you can see he's got some real big crow's feet on the sides. Let me show you a better picture. So you can see right here. So we have to add that. But you can also see under the eyes, under the bags of the eyes, there's a little bit of wrinkles. Now, I'm actually not sure if that's a makeup or if that's actually just him doing that expression. But we have to add a lot of the under eye detail. He's got a brow, but it's supposed to be a full, thick brow right above the eyeball. So look very, very closely. He's got a lot of empty room up here. But we don't need that. It's too hollow above the eye. So we have to fill a big piece on both sides. So I got two little carrot sticks. So we're gonna fill in there. Yeah, that's enough. Perfect. looks like we are at the home stretch. So off camera, I added some wrinkles to his face here. Now I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side so you guys can see. So I've already added just the lines, but I'm gonna use this tool right here. It's got a double edge on it, a really thin guitar string, and then like an E string. So I'm going to use that one, and I'm going to kind of carve deep because we want these to be deep, not too deep. So that's pretty deep, as you guys can see there. Carved. Now we got to blend them in. So I am going to say we are finished. Thanks for watching so far. Looks like we are finished the sculpting phase. So I am going to bring you guys into the shop, take one last look at the sculpture, and then we're on to molding. So let's go. This is our finished product. Not finished product, but finished sculpture. So we are absolutely done sculpting. This is our Evil Ed. Next stop, making a mask mold. So we're going to go through the things we need for this process. We're going to need a couple buckets, little pails, bowls like this. You can use smaller ones for one-sided molds like this, but I use bigger ones. It's just easier to mix and get everything together. You're going to need some cut burlap. Yes, you have to use burlap. You can't use like cloth or a t-shirt or nothing like that. It has to be burlap. You can buy this stuff from Walmart or a craft store or Michael's. Cheap. Cheap like borscht. This is kind of acts like rebar does in concrete. So if your concrete cracks, it won't fall apart. It's just going to crack. So this keeps the structural integrity of your mold. You must use burlap when you make a mold. So we're going to need baby powder and a mask. Now, I don't know if these are good enough. This is what I wear. Baby powder is very, very dangerous. It causes cancer. Make sure you wear one of these when you're using the plaster and when you're using the baby powder. Always wear a mask. We're going to need rubber or latex or nitrile or vinyl gloves. Any gloves. You don't need them. I prefer gloves because I don't like my hands being all chalky and uncomfortable. These are, I love using gloves. They work for me. Gonna need a couple dirty face cloths, a couple soft bristled brushes, super baby soft. Gonna need one of these spatula thingamabobajiggers. I don't know what this is, no clue, but you need one of those. You're gonna need a rasp to sand off the rough edges of your mold. We'll need a bunch of these. I'd say buy a dozen to be safe, maybe more. We'll count as we go. I've never counted, but these are to make the walls of the mold. We're going to need our sculpting tools for the walls. We'll need a couple of these. I fill one halfway with warm water for washing our hands and one halfway with ice cold water. And it can't just be cool water, it has to be ice cold water, and that's what we mix our plaster powder with to make our plaster, our liquid plaster to put on the mold. It sets way too fast if you use even room temperature water. You need to use ice cold water. So this is what we need. I covered this table with a couple of garbage bags. It will be messy, obviously messy. So I'm gonna lay out another garbage bag on the floor where I'm mixing my water and plaster. It wipes up easy afterwards. It's just very chalky and very dusty. So you might want to cover things if you're in a place like your home or studio or something like that. But yeah, so let's get started with our mold. So as you can see, I put some 2x4 pieces of wood to balance this out. So now we got a solid structure. So now we have to build our wall, our mold wall. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our 1 pound bricks, we are going to cut them in half this way. So that is how high we want our mold walls. So these are already made for us, which is great. That saves us a ton of time. So let's cut those all first. I'd say we're going to need about 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, about a dozen, so six bricks. want this to be too far away from the mold. We don't want a massive, massive mold. We want a small mold, but with enough room that we can do our work between this. So I'm not going to say in inches or centimeters. That's a bad way. I don't know. Just enough room so that there's probably 2 or 3 finger space in between the sculpture. So now we're going to start blending all of these together on the outside. So we're just going to sculpt them all together, mush them all into our fingers, but trying not to move the integrity of how big we want this mold to be. Now this wall is just to keep the liquid plaster inside so it doesn't spill everywhere. So this doesn't have to be super strong, but it has to be without holes in it. So we're gonna have to make sure all the bottoms are perfect so nothing leaks out. But with this kind of clay, if you just push it down, nothing is really gonna leak out. This is really sticky clay, which is great for what we're doing. So I'm just gonna smush this all right to the table, right to the, not a lot, I'm just overdoing it right now. Just so it sticks, which it will. This is just an easy way to do it, there we go. That just means it's not moving anywhere. And it's gonna keep the ultra cal inside, it's gonna keep the plaster inside. Alright, so as we can see, we just wanted to fill any kind of hole that we might see so that the plaster cannot seep out. That's all we really wanted to do. So it doesn't have to be perfect. You can see there's a lot of little mistakes all over. Big blotches here and there. That's really not the point. As long as we have that little bit of room to work around, we need to brush in there. Even that is a lot of room. Like, we really don't need that much, but better safe than sorry for this tutorial. So we have to put baby powder over this whole thing, because what this does is it acts in 2 different ways. It acts as a mold release, so when we're finished, this will come out of the mold in one piece, except for probably the teeth. But it's much easier as a mold release. But more important than that, this acts to hold on to the plaster that we put on here. Because without this, the plaster would bead off of the sculpture and you'd never be able to get the plaster to stick to it. So this holds it. So very, very soft brush. You don't want to scrape any of the detail of this sculpture. But I am putting a little bit of pressure on it, so you want the softest brush imaginable. But we want this stuff everywhere. We want it on the outside of the mold, the inside of the mold, the walls. We want it everywhere, because then it sticks. We want it to stick. Now what I'm going to do is, to get rid of all the excess, is I'm going to hold my breath and not breathe it in, but see all that come up. I don't want piles of it still sticking in here. So now all the excess is gone. Does it look white from there? Okay, there we go. So we're at the ultra cal plaster mixing stage.
Now I'm probably gonna have to do 2 batches, but I'm only gonna record 1. So later on, I'll explain to you how I used 2. But it's the same exact process and we don't need to record that twice. So this is how I'm gonna start with this bowl right here. Here is my ice cold water, which is what we need to mix the plaster. I'm as close as we possibly can be so you guys can see how this works. So one's not enough. I would say 2 isn't enough either, so I'm gonna say 3. I don't know how much this is by weight or by measurement. I've never ever measured in that way. I just eye it all out. So I'd say this is about 1/4 full of water. So now here's our Ultra Cal, our plaster. Okay, so the mixing of this is very specific. So this again, I've never measured. I don't know how many I put in here. We're just gonna do it by eye. So you just kind of sift it in there, but you don't mix. Don't mix at all. You just kind of sift. And you're gonna do that about 10 or more times. We're just sifting. So we're gonna keep sifting until I see something. And when I do see that, then I'm gonna tell you why. So once the plaster starts to build up so high that it's coming through, then it's almost time. See how it's sitting on the surface? And then it gets absorbed? Okay, we're pretty close to being able to start mixing. We don't mix until there's so much plaster in here that it's making mountains of white inside the water. You see those? So that's just sitting there. Okay, but I'm feeling it, and it's still nowhere near as deep as we need it. So we're gonna keep putting more in there. So it's starting to get really, really, really thick and clumpy, and that's when you start mixing. So yeah, if it's clumpy like that in your hand, that's when you start mixing. So you can mix with 1 hand, 2 hands. Now you see why I want to wear some gloves, okay? Okay, so this is really hard to breathe in. So now I'm done mixing the plaster, I don't need that. I mean, now that I'm done with the powder, I don't need that. So I'm going to keep mixing here for probably a few minutes till it gets the consistency of, I would say, a little thinner than pancake batter. Not that thick, we want it a little tiny bit thinner. So we want to get all the little tiny clumps. We cannot do it until all these little clumps are mixed in with the water. The more time that goes by, the thicker that this is going to get until it actually turns into plaster itself, concrete, which takes about 15, 20 minutes, half an hour. Depends on how cool it is in the room, depends how humid it is in the room, depends how the temperature of the water you use. It depends on so many different variables. So right now this is still, you see it's kind of watery. We don't, that's a little too watery, so we're going to keep mixing and keep mixing and keep mixing. So I'm going to keep mixing until it starts to get a little bit hard. Not hard, but until it starts to thicken up a whole lot. So like I said, the cooler and the colder the water you use, the slower this is going to turn into actual plaster and concrete. So no matter what you're doing, You don't want it to set fast. Do not use warm water, because I mean, like right now, it would be turning into globs because I use hot water. Hot water kicks the actual powder and turns it. So the colder the water, the better. Like this is cold on my hands. That's how cold it is. Even mixed with the plaster, so you know that's a good mixture. So I'm just gonna sit here for a while, and this is how it goes. Once you've made it thick enough with your water, you want it to be able to do it manually. So I'm still figuring out if there's little clumps. Oh, there is little clumps of powder in here. You got to get all those, because if you put that on your mold, that's going to cause a weakness and an air bubble. So this is getting close, but as you can see from the camera, it's still watery. We don't want watery. We don't put it on the mold until it's starting to set slightly. So I just want to make sure now that the teeth are in the right place. Everything's good. There's no scratches on the sculpture, because this is the point of no return here. Okay, here we go. Here we go, folks. So what I'm going to do is show you guys. So this is how we do it. We just slowly put it in the smallest details first. The most important thing is to get this stuff into the smaller details. So we're lightly tapping it in there. I'm not touching the sculpture. I'm just tapping it in there. I'm going to use the smaller brush to tap it in there. So now I'm going to kind of poke in the mouth to make sure we have no air bubbles. We do not want air bubbles. The mouth is the only place where this one could get air bubbles, so it's very important we poke all those. And it can be messy, it's okay. We don't want to hurt the sculpture, we don't want to hurt anything. We gotta make sure there's no air bubbles. Okay, so I'm gonna keep sticking it in there. I'm not touching the teeth, I'm just kind of letting it go in there, if you guys can see it. So now I want to go do the rest of the sculpture. Now you do want to touch the sculpture, you just want to be very gentle, and you want to mix this ultra cal as you're going. You want to keep mixing it. So right here at the top of the head, we're going to brush that into that wound, or else we're going to get tons of air bubbles. So we gotta brush into that detail. It's not going to harm your sculpture, it's not going to harm it, trust me. So we're brushing into that wound on the top of his head. We're brushing every way, back and forth. Okay, I'm going to mix this. This is a breakneck thing. We want to get the bottom of the sculpture first, because you can get air bubbles right at the bottom, right at the base. So make sure we're getting the base first. Right at the bottom where the board meets the sculpture. This is of utmost importance first. Once we have a cover on everything, we don't have to stress as much, because once the detail of the face is covered, the rest will come with it. Be careful of the teeth here. I'm still not forcing those in. We're still dropping. If I force the teeth, they're dead. That ruins the whole sculpture. I can't touch the teeth. Okay, so now we're getting the inside walls of the sculpture. Okay, so now we're making sure there's no air bubbles. Don't touch the sculpture. Now here we go. I'm going to lightly put another coat like this. That's okay, as long as we don't touch the sculpture. We don't want to touch the sculpture. The more you mix, the more it stays soft. So right now we've covered the sculpture a bunch of times. So it's got a few layers. Now we wait. So what we're waiting for is for this sculpture to slightly start getting a dullness to it. Right now it's shiny and wet. Once it starts losing its shine, then it's time to put on another coat. Until then, we do not touch this. we do not put pressure on anything because it's already starting to set underneath. So if we touch this, we could already crack the surface. Okay, this is starting to set. So what I'm going to do, here's your pile of burlap, probably about 20 pieces. Okay, what I'm going to do is just add a little more where the teeth were. I don't want to hurt the teeth. Okay, so what I'm going to start doing here is mixing up. This is what we do. Little pieces like this, we put one right here. Softly, we don't push it down, we just leave it the way it is. This is what we got to do, one layer onto the whole sculpture. So now I'm doubling it over, about 1 inch overhang, and that's it. I'm just touching it, not pushing any pressure on it. All this burlap is not 100% necessary. All of it, a little pieces, yes, but all of it, no, we're just overkilling. So now I'm adding the rest really softly, and I'm rubbing it over the entire sculpture because it's turning into mud and we got to get it out. It'll be set in probably 5 minutes. This is ready to demold. Once this is cooled to the touch, it's ready to go. It's been about 45 minutes to an hour. Usually takes about 45 minutes to an hour and a half for it to get to that stage, depending on the humidity of your room, the water you used, again, over and over. This went through a cycle of getting super, really hot to the touch. You can see steam coming off of it. And then it went to cool to the touch. So once it gets to cool to the touch, it is ready to demold. So I forgot that this won't come off because it's screwed to the back. So we gotta take these, oh, can you guys even see that? So I gotta take these 2 screws off. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is take off all this clay. So here's our mold. There's a lot of pieces we can break off. All these kind of edges here, we don't need those. Snap them all off. And remember, don't do any of this if your sculpture is still warm, or you can crack the whole thing. But now that it's cold to the touch, cool to the touch, it's plaster. It's set concrete right now. Okay, so I'm going to use our rasp here just to get these sharp edges. So first we're just trying to get this piece of wood out. So now, like I said, don't use metal. I'm going to use metal. Because I know where, I just have to get a corner. I have to get a corner to bend for it to come out in bigger pieces. You don't want to be picking this out for 5 hours. You want to be able to take it out. And that's what the baby powder is for. So once I can get a hold of one corner, I can probably pull it out in a few pieces. But because of the teeth, it is going to be quite difficult to take it out in one piece. There's no way it'll come out in one piece. But if I didn't put the baby powder in, I'd be here for hours and hours digging. So the mold is perfect, near perfect. We got a few little things to patch in here, but I'm gonna off camera take the clay out of the mouth, and then I'm gonna show you guys how to do some patches in here. But other than that, the mold is frickin' perfect. Success. So we have a few little issues in our mold, nothing major, but I'm gonna show you guys how to fix that. All right, so I have a little tiny bit of water in here. I have some Ultra Cal. I'm gonna put a crap ton. I want it to be thick, like thick. So I'm gonna pour some more in there. Super gunky thick. That's what I need right there. So this is the inside of the mold. There's a bubble here, a bubble here, a here. I have to fill any of those bubbles so that there's not mistakes in the pulls after we pour the latex. So I have a little tiny brush, and I'm just gonna fill those little holes and then kind of sculpt them with my fingers. So now that we have this mold, this is permanent. We have this mold forever. But the thing is this is a mother mold, a master mold. If we actually pour a really thick copy of this mask, we can make smaller molds. Here's our perfect finished mold. We are here to pour liquid latex now. So since the teeth are so deep, I put a little bit of latex in there earlier so that this will dry faster. If the long far latex would stay in there and I pulled the mask, the teeth might be mushy. So, okay, so this is how we do it. I got a really small brush right here that we need, and you just pour it in. That's it. So that's enough to slush it around. So there's only approximately two places in Canada to buy liquid latex. And if you need information on that, contact me and let me know. So what I'm gonna do now is the mold is concrete, so with the brush you can be as hard as you want, but you wanna brush the detail. You wanna brush into the teeth. So once it's full, you just let it sit for a little bit. I'd say about, I don't know, a half an hour? No, not half an hour. Like 10 minutes. I don't know why I said that. 10 minutes, and then you'd pour it back out. Then you'd wait. If you had a humid house, I'd wait an hour, maybe 2, and pour again, once or twice. For a mask like this, that's going to be a face mask, you only have to do 1 or 2. And what I mean is, like, I'm going to pour this out right away, completely out, and then I'm going to let it sit for about 45 minutes, a couple hours, and then I'm going to pour it in again, and I'm going to do the same thing, pour it out completely, like I'm about to show you right now, and that's it. Then you wait a couple days, depending on how humid it is in your house, a couple days. My house, I'll be able to paint one, I'll be able to pull it in a day, and then I'll be able to let it dry for a day. You'll see all that too. Okay, so that's definitely enough. So now, you can't really see that, can you? Okay, so we're pouring that back into the bucket, back into this little container. So I'm gonna do 2 layers, but I'm gonna let it dry for a couple hours first. So I poured this last night at about midnight. It's almost 12 in the afternoon the next day, so 12 hours. I've had a fan on it the whole night, so this is dry. This is latex right here. Before we pull it out though, there's one thing we need to do.
This is cornstarch. You can use baby powder if you like, but cornstarch is not dangerous. So we'll use cornstarch, and we gotta brush the whole inside because raw latex, even when it's dry, will stick to itself. If I would have pulled this over and pushed it down, it would have stuck together and glued it to itself. So we absolutely must put this on the inside. That is a step you do not want to forget. So I don't know if the teeth are dry on the inside, I hope they are, but this is how we check. And if this doesn't work, that's okay. We'll just pour another one. It's not a big deal, but I'm assuming this will be fine. So I didn't do two pours, I only did one. So I'm gonna make another thicker one later, but here we go. So usually I could just rip this out, but I want the teeth to come out perfectly. Okay. Okay. We have a raw pull here. We do have a couple complications here. Two of the teeth did not work out. Two of the bottom teeth did not work out. There's air bubbles, but the big ones worked. So what that means is I can rebuild those. I can rebuild those easily, but we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to pour another one. But the next step for us is painting. I'm going to repair these teeth by just getting little bits of latex. I'll use one of these and I'm going to rebuild the points by just adding pieces and pieces and pieces. It will work eventually, but we're just going to use this one for painting purposes, and we're going to let it dry for a couple days. Guess what we're doing today, everyone? We're painting. So I always just keep it on with a piece of duct tape. So once this came out of the mold, I washed this with soap and water. Doesn't matter what kind of soap, doesn't matter, just wash it, scrub it with a little clean dish towel or something like that. And then what we have to do is buy some rubbing alcohol. And it can't just be the stuff from on the shelf. This is 99% pure alcohol, isopropyl. So that you have to get over the counter. So that you have to actually ask them for it. Same price, but it's got to be that. So you got to spray this whole thing down with alcohol. And what that does is it opens the pores of the latex so that when we paint it, it will bond better. This is not an absolutely necessary step. You don't have to do this. It's just works. It's very beneficial. So we're gonna let that dry for a little while. Not gonna need that for a bit. Alcohol dries almost immediately. So what I have here is a little thing full of latex, liquid latex. So the actor has pretty fair skin, not dark at all, very light. So I mixed it about halfway with latex. So our first base is going to be a cashmere tan. So that's a kind of a darker, not a darker, but a lighter brown, a lighter beige. So I don't measure, I just squirt in a whole lot. So a certain measurement that we do want to keep track of is you cannot paint latex by just paint. You can't use paint. You have to mix the paint with the latex. And I'll tell you why in a second. So we have to mix this latex with our paint to get a base coat. So far we've got a real kind of dark brown. Obviously that's not going to be good for color of the face. So we add, okay, so a very, very important thing is your paint can never be more than the latex you have in here. Your latex always has to be like 60% or maybe 55% or even 50% paint and 50% mixture of latex, but you cannot go over with paint. because then your paint will start to crack, it'll peel, it'll do a lot of things you don't want it to do if you are not mixing it with enough latex. So we're going to put white in next to make it a little lighter. Okay, I'm going to start mixing that, but we have to add a lot more colors. It's not just going to be a light skin tone. We have to add reds to it, we have to add a bit of yellow to it, we have to have a bit of a black even. Yeah. This is how you get real textures and real... See that almost looks like good skin already, but I can tell by this other one that there's red tinges in here, there's black. You have to put black because it's a base, it's an underlying base. So you'd think that if you added black to almost white or beige that it's going to turn black. It's not going to turn black. But you have to add like look, watch this. A few drops, that's it. Just a few drops. But that will make a big difference. So those few drops I'm mixing in, and I can't see any black anymore. But that just means the base of the skin will have a darker tone. Not the skin tone itself, but the base of the skin, meaning it'll be more opaque and less transparent. Because if you don't put dark colors in the base when you're mixing your colors, even when I'm mixing white, I'm putting a couple black dots in there and mix it with the white, so that your base of white is going to be a lot stronger. Because if I just mixed white and I put it on here, it's not going to be thick at all. It's going to be really, really light and thin. But if I put a little bit of black in there, the base of the skin is already there, so you only have to put a couple coats. So that was enough black, just for a couple dots. Don't need that anymore. I didn't need brown either. I'm going to put a few drops of yellow. Just that's it. That's it. This will just bring more out of your paint. This will just make it pop a whole lot more instead of just being a dull, baseless paint job. So you want to put a little bit of red. Do like 4 dots. You might add more. Let's see how it mixes. So we're mixing it up. I can see some yellow tinges in there. I can see some red, a little more red. So skin is pinkish, it's not just brown. Most skin is pinkish, and we will put highlights everywhere. We'll be able to see pink highlights on certain places of the body. Okay, so I can see a little bit of pink in there, so that's good. So this is a good color for skin. So painting is my favorite part. I love painting. And these are all dollar store paints, guys. These are all, you can buy them from Michael's for like $3, but these are dollar store paints and they're perfect. They're amazing. I've used these for 13 years. Just like the dollar store clay. This stuff is really, really quality stuff, and it works exactly what we need it to. I've tried painting with inks and other types of approaches to it, and none are as effective as just the dollar store acrylics. Love working with acrylics. Painting latex is very, very tricky, but once you learn it, you got it. So when I'm painting latex, I use several different kinds of brushes. When I'm doing big projects, I'll use the fat ones like this. I don't think I'll be using any of those for that. And then I have the smaller ones. Those are very good. And then in here, I keep all my really, really small detailed ones. Very small detailed ones. Now, these are the ones I use the most. So this is what we use to paint. What is that? That is a bag full of sponges. So I'm going to start painting. This is going to be easier for you guys to see down there. So I'm going to keep this little latch up here, this little piece of tape. And we can paint over that because we can just cut this off afterwards. Not a big deal. It's just going to be help us to paint. So I'm not going to touch the teeth because I have to paint the mouth black and the tongue and other things. So we don't need to go over it with skin tone. We'll just do the rest with skin tone. So this is what we do, guys. We dip in all the way, so you get it on it, and then I kind of wipe it off a few times, dip it in, let it soak, let it get really, really thick inside the sponge. start painting. And all we do, I'll swipe a little bit of excess off there. So we got about that much on there. So all we do is we just dab, you guys. Just dab. Making a half mask is challenging because I usually have a full mask where I can just put my hand right in it. So this is going to slide off my hand a lot. I didn't really think of an alternative way to paint, but hey, whatever does the job. So this is what we're doing, guys. And it's going to look like you have a bunch of ugly bubbles on there. You see that right there? That's okay. We're going to come back to that, and the more we dab, like I'm not slamming it, but I'm putting enough pressure to get inside the actual wound here. So when I see little pieces of latex that get stuck, I just take them out with my finger. So as you can see, the little bubbles are gone. We don't have those little bubbles anymore. So now this sponge is getting a little bit caked. Once you see little dots on here that stick, which is not much yet, you want to leave that there for later. Grab another one, do the same thing, dip it in a few times. I do that usually after a few minutes. That's why I have a bag full of them. Because then you'll once you start getting little nubs all over your sculpt, then you'll know you used it far too long. It's trial and error, people. This is how you do it, though. If you're just planning on making one mask and painting it up and that's all, you're not going to need to worry about half the stuff that I'm telling you guys. But if you want to do it for a hobby or something and you're going to get really good at it, these are the things to know. So now the bottom of the jaw, and we should be good for coat 1. We're going to do about 2 or 3 coats. I'll only show 1 on camera, but I'll probably do 3. Just to get a really nice thick paint job. So it was like a yellow almost. You see that on the face? No, you can't. It was, oh, okay. Well, you can see the mouth. So the mouth hasn't been painted, so you can see the difference of color there. So that's just one. That's just 1 coat. I'll do a couple more, and then when we're ready for the next step, I'll be back. Alright, we're going to paint the inside of the nostrils and the inside of the mouth next, just to get those black parts out of the way. So I've painted the tongue a dark red. I painted the inside of the nostrils. Now I'm going to kind of just like, the mouth holds itself open perfectly like this, so I get our black here, and I'm going to start painting on the inside. You don't want to get the gums and you don't want to get the teeth, just the black of the mouth. So I'm going to do two coats over with the black, and we'll be back. Alright, I mixed up an ugly, muddy, brownish, reddish, just ugly, gross color. And that's what we're going to fill in his little scar with. So again, I'm going to use one of these smaller brushes. And I'm going to try to stay in the lines because there's a lot more I have to do. So I'm just going to spread it on the inside of his wound. So I'll let that dry and I'll do it again. So I've mixed the fleshy gum color, and we're going to paint the gums. Okay, I have a really dirty yellow here, a mucky orange, and kind of a muddy red, and just a kind of a light brown. So what we're going to do now is put a little bit of these colors around the wound, because on the screenshots from the movie there's those colors all over the place. So not too much, we don't want to make it look cartoony or anything like that, but we do need these colors around it. So I'm going to get a little bit of red here, and I'm going to show you guys how I do it. So this is red, so I'm just going to put the slightest amount, and then I'm going to rub it in. We only need it in little places around the wound here. See? Don't need it all over the place. It's getting a lot of different shades on there, which is what we're looking for. You can see all the different colors in the wound there, the darkness in the middle, the red around it, the brown, the yellow, the orange. You can see the difference of color in the mouth. You can see how different the white is from the skin tone. So what we're going to do next is some airbrushing. So this is my airbrush machine. It is called a single action machine, and all that means is you can only turn it off and on, or on and off, spray, not spray. So that's a single action. These are dirt cheap. These are 20 bucks at Princess Auto. They are very easy to clean, very easy to use. They are pretty much idiot proof. Here is my compressor. I bought this compressor at Canadian Tire, and it came with a smaller airbrush for about 100 bucks. These compressors are phenomenal. I've owned this one for probably about 8 years, and it's still going strong. Alright, so I'm going to mix up some airbrush and show you guys how it goes. So first, what I'm going to have to do to this is spray black all around here, because I want it to look like an old dirty wound. Right now, it's okay, but we need some real crusty darkness in that. So black is the way to go. So water was first in here, and then I'm going to put, not too much, we don't need a crap ton of black, and then I'm just going to shake it with my hand on top of it. Once I've shaked it enough, once I've shook it enough, then I'm also going to wipe all the acrylics off of the sides. Kind of just like get it all out there. Okay, that goes in the garbage. I'm going to add more water just to make it a little watery. I don't want it to be dark black. I want it to be black, but to the point where it's not going to be just midnight black. It's going to be dark, dirty black. That's thin, a little bit thin. So I put the end on here. Stick this piece into my airbrush. Stays in there comfortably. So when you're spraying, you're like tss, tss, tss. So this might be noisy for a bit, but you'll be able to see from there what I'm doing. I want the mouth to be dirty, and I want the head to be dirty. So here's my board where I test. So you can see there. Okay, so I want this way down. I want almost nothing coming out of it. So can you see? So just a bit. So when it's there. So I'm only getting the wound and around the wound. I don't want to get any of the other head or any other pieces. Now, just to make this a little faster, I have a few tricks. hair dryer. Amazing. So it's definitely dry now. And I'm gonna go wet this cloth and be right back. So we want this to be wet, but not dripping wet and not wrung out dry wet. It's gonna kind of have to be half and half. So what I'm gonna do first is wipe all the detail off the mouth, because now we're not wiping, this is so hard to explain. So we're not completely wiping it all off. We're softly wiping the excess off, because we want the teeth and the gums to be slightly dirty looking. Because you don't just want bright pink gums. This is a vampire. He's eating some dead flesh and animals, right? And humans and all sorts of nasty stuff. His mouth is not going to be pretty. So now I'm wiping all the dirt off the teeth, but I'm leaving dirt in between the gums. Now watch how the eyes, or watch how the wound on the head changes. It's super, super dark right now, but that's not what we want. We don't want super, super dark. So I'm gonna softly wipe this off. I'm not trying to get into the detail, I'm just trying to wipe the surface off. So we want to keep that, oh yeah, that's perfect. Can you see, oh man. Really can't see that. Wow, that sucks. Okay, so we're wiping all the detail off, all of the black that we just spray painted, but it's leaving a ton of great dark detail inside the wound, which is exactly what we want. So that's a wash. Now I'm trying to scrub all the excess off. The next color we're going to do is kind of a light fleshy light brownish pink. It's going to be darker and more redness than the skin tone, but we're going to do a full wash, meaning we're going to spray the whole thing, not this. We're going to avoid that. That's what's good about the airbrush though. We can avoid little pieces, but we don't want to spray this. We want to spray the rest of the mask so that when we wipe it off, the little details will stay in the actual wrinkles. So it gives some depth to the sculpture itself. Okay, and just like that, it's dry again. So we're going to wipe off the pink and just leave in the wrinkles. We don't want to scrub the pink out of the wrinkles. We want to leave a little bit of it so it looks like it's the actual skin color. So he's got a lot of colors all over his face. He's got dark spots and red spots and pink spots. I guess it's just because he's changing so quickly into a vampire. Like, I don't know if you could see this picture, but he's got like different colors all over his face. We're gonna try, and this thing is in the wrong spot. It's supposed to be right in the middle here. This was only a makeup test for this actor, so yeah, disregard that because it's in the wrong spot. But yeah, I'm gonna try to put some colors in this guy. So one of the last things I'm going to show you guys, see if you could see my phone. I doubt you can, but let's just check it out. So one of the last details we need to do is he's got darkness all over. Like you can see he's got the pink and the redness all over his skin, but he's also got dark patches. So I have to blotch some black or brown all over the place to make him look dirty. that's just the way it is in the picture, so we're gonna follow suit. We're gonna do some stuff like that. I want this to be as accurate as possible. I want this to be brutal looking when we're done. I want it to be so incredibly freaky and accurate that it's like, wow. Wow, we are pretty close to finished here. This thing looks pretty darn good. Hope you guys can see this detail. Alright. We only have a few steps left before we are finished. As it stands, our actual paint job is finished. The eyes come after, and we'll put a little bit of really wet looking stuff inside of his wound. But other than that, the paint is finished. So we're gonna put a sealant on the paint. So I'll give you guys a really good shot at this once we're actually finished. So this is stuff called perma-wet. There's a few alternatives for this. One you can buy at pretty much any Canadian Tire. It's called Plasti-Dip Glossifier. This stuff is very poisonous though. This stuff is not. Plasti-Dip is very poisonous. You have to spray that outside. This is non-toxic. It's an elastomer. So what this is going to do is this is going to put a wet coat over the whole entire mask, but it's an elastomer, meaning when it dries, it'll be stretchy like the latex. So it bonds right to the latex and it protects the paint. So all these light shades, if I got my finger wet right now and wiped them, they'd all come off. But once we put this on, it completely protects our paintwork. So this is what we're going to do now. So you gotta do a lot of. So we're going to put some water in here because right now it's too thick to go through. Okay, so this is our last airbrushing. We won't need to do any more after this. And sometimes sometimes the perma-wet is too thick, so I just have to go in and add a little more water, which is fine. But I don't want this too thin. Okay, so here it goes. I'm going to start at the bottom here. This is our finished product. I'm going to put another coat on here, but that's okay. You guys don't need to see that. But look at all of our detail. It still does look a little bit glossy, but that'll turn down just slightly. But this is good. The skin is glossy, especially if you're sweaty. A vampire is sweaty. He was sweaty in this movie. So this is great. This looks absolutely amazing. We're still not done though, but this is it for me for tonight. Tomorrow we will be back to paint the eyes and to put some goop into the wound, and then we are finished. Okay, we are at the last few steps of our complete tutorial here. So our next two steps, this is Liquitex. You can get this from Michael's. It's about 20 bucks. It's high gloss elastic gloss varnish. So this is usable on rubber materials like latex, like plastic, but we're going to use this to make the wound look wet and to make the teeth look shiny. This is awesome stuff. I love this stuff. So we're going to pour a little bit in this cap. I use a lot of these kind of caps, tons of them, like Gatorade or Powerade. So let's do this. So this is obviously finished. The paint is finished. It does have a sheen to it. It's a slight sheen. Once we put this up here, you'll see the difference. This will be completely glossy, wet looking. So that's going to make this look less sheen. This one specifically is okay if it looks like this, because in the movie, that's exactly what he looks like. So here we're going to put some of that on there. Alright, so we're going to let those dry. Come back in about 20 minutes. Yeah, you can see that gloss. Come back in about 20 minutes, and then we're going to do the very last step, the eyes. Okay, we are back for our very last step, and then we will get to see finished pictures and video. So I've mixed up some slightly dark crimson red, some muddy yellow, and black. So we got 3 colors here. To paint the eyes properly, we have to paint the entire eye red first. And you'll see why after the rest gets painted. So we're painting only acrylics. We don't need to mix latex with this one, because we'll be putting a covering over this. Alright, I'm going to let that dry. Gonna let that dry and we'll be back. Okay, so the red is dry. So we're gonna pick out another paintbrush here. Really soft bristles is what I need. So our next color is black. So if there's anything in this that I haven't covered that you believe that I may have missed, as I said earlier, feel free to email me at creepingdeathproductions@hotmail.com. That's creepingdeathproductions@hotmail.com. Or you can find me on Facebook at Creeping Death Productions or at Regina Sculpt Night. So there's many ways to get a hold of me. I'll usually reply within a day or so. I won't make you wait, trust me. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me some messages. Next up is the yellow. There's 2 layers of yellow, 2 lines of yellow. So there's going to be, so it's black, yellow, red, yellow. So I'm going to paint 2 circles of yellow on each eyeball. So once that dries, then I can put the black dots in the middle. Look at that. So I'll dip this in black. Dip this Q-tip in black, because we only need a touch of black, right in the middle. There are those eyes, guys. Still not done though. We have to put a clear coat over them. Then we will be officially finished. This is it. The end of the road. So this is what we need for our eyes. This is a 5-minute epoxy from Dollarama. But our last touch is to make these eyes look realistic and glassy and glossy. Now this is one thing, but this stuff makes it looks like it's actual eyes, someone's actual glossy eyes. We could have used this stuff on the eyes, but it doesn't quite cut it. It looks good, but this stuff looks like glass. So this stuff's amazing. So what I'll do right now is I'll mix it up
So yeah, so what I'll do is, I'm not gonna explain how to use the epoxy. Read the instructions. I'm gonna mix it up, I'm gonna add it to the eyes, and then I'll show you the finished product when I'm done. And keep in mind, this is not to wear. I will show you right now what you can do to make it wearable. So this mask is just for display, but if you were ever to, when you're making one yourself and sculpting your own, if it's something like this with blackness inside the mouth, I would cut out 2 pieces of the black, maybe a big 1-inch piece here and a 1-inch piece here, and then I would tape mesh, black mesh to the inside, so that when you're looking at it, it still looks like blackness in the mouth and you can't tell that it's a mask. So, and for eyes, for the nose, I would obviously cut the nostrils out as well. And for eyes, I would either cut out the entire eye, but then you'll kill the look of the vampire. So you could cut out little slivers in the top corners of the eyes, like maybe about a 1/2 inch, a triangle in the corner of each eye, so that way you can look and you can see out. This one's just for display, so it's not going to be wearable. Alright everyone, we're finished. Our latex mask making tutorial is done. Are you ready to see the final product? There he is, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. There is our finished product. This is just a Raggedy Ann wig that I bought at Value Village for like 12 bucks at Halloween time. It's exactly what he has on in the movie, so it's perfect. But here we are, guys. This is the fruits of our labor. Alright everyone, we are finished. There is your full mask making tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed yourself. I hope you had a good time. I hope you learned a lot. I hope it was clear and concise and easy to follow. If you want to get a hold of me, if you have any questions whatsoever, email me at creepingdeathproductions@hotmail.com or find me on Facebook, Creeping Death Productions or Regina Sculpt Night. I do offer a 5-day full mask making camp. That's 1-on-1 or 2-on-1. I can do a couple or one person. 5 days, it's complete. You get to learn how to make a whole head and bust all the way down. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for supporting the Saskatchewan film industry. We gotta support all of our artists. We have such a pool of talent in this province, in this city specifically. So thank you so much to Cynthia, the Saskatchewan Media Production Industry Association, for funding this, for putting this on, for making this available to you guys. Because yeah, this is how we support our industry, and we need to bring awareness and get it all back on track. So thank you so much for everyone watching. Thank you to Cynthia, and hey, get making some masks.